Hello everyone, I'm Silvia from Fairlight Tarot. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to have a look at a few decks that are currently out of print, but that are going to be reprinted soon or in the immediate future. Now we're going to talk about Kickstarters and we're going to talk about the artist's own reprinting. So stay tuned, because if you like these decks and you, for whatever reason, you didn't have the opportunity to get one of these, and you really want them and you don't want to spend, you know, the hundreds of dollars they currently sell for on eBay or Etsy, you may get your opportunity to buy them at a decent price. So I remember the other day I was talking about this deck. So this is the Solara Occulto Tarot, and I was mentioning that it is currently being founded on Kickstarter. The name, so I was trying to post the link to the Kickstarter in one of the comments as opposed to the description box below, but I think that there's kind of a filter in place in which you cannot post external links in the comments, and I think it's for safety reasons to kind of prevent spamming. I think, I'm not entirely sure, but that's one of the things that I actually learned by using YouTube. And so what I'm going to do today for you know, every deck that I'm going to show you today, I will make sure to post the link to either the Kickstarter, or, you know, because there might not be a Kickstarter yet, or there might not be a link to the production, to the reprint yet. But I'll make sure to post a link to a place where you can at least find some kind of information. So I know that not everyone knows this, but this deck is actually currently, as I said, being funded on Kickstarter, and it's not under this name. So there's been a couple of people actually trying to search for this Solara Occulto Tarot, and apparently it wasn't coming up. And the name is actually going to be Solara Occulto Meliora. So as I said, I'm just going to put the link in the description box below so that everyone can find it. Now this deck, the original one, the one that I have here, is just, I think it's the second edition. So yeah, it's the second edition for 2020. If you have this deck, you will remember that even this edition actually came with really large borders. I had to trim it down because it was just not manageable for me. And the good news is that, or the news, because perhaps, you know, people might actually like the borders, but the new edition, the one that is currently funding on Kickstarter, actually looks like this. So it's borderless. And, you know, it's basically, that's the major difference between the two decks, the two editions. But also one really good news is that this deck will be a much bigger deck. So there will be the traditional, I think it's 80 cards from this edition. Plus there'll be another 20 cards taken from the same artist Oracle deck, which it's also out of print, and it's called Mercury, Salt and Sulfur, referring to the alchemical elements. And so it will be the tarot deck combining the, you know, the majors and the minor arcanas, and 20 cards from that really beautiful Oracle deck. If you have never seen it, I think that Danny Mystic has shown the Mercury, Salt and Sulfur deck, Oracle deck, in one of her videos. It's absolutely beautiful. I unfortunately missed out. I don't have it. I wish I did. It's actually one of my favorite Oracle decks, but unfortunately, because it is such a beautiful deck and it went out of print, I saw it selling on one of the Facebook groups, I mean, for like $500 Australian, but still, you know, a lot of money. So the good news is that you don't have to spend that kind of money, and I will say this quite frequently in this video, because all of the decks that I'm going to show you today, as I said in the intro, are going to be reprinted, which means that, you know, you don't have to sell your kidneys to buy one of them. So this is the Solara Occulto Tarot, and it will be, actually is currently funded on Kickstarter, as I said, under the name Solara Occulto Meliora. So the second deck that I want to show you today is the Tilbury Tarot. I have the second edition, and there is currently available on the creator's website. Actually, not the creator, unfortunately the creator passed away, but his brother has taken over the company, and they have released a third print. Now the third print is pretty much similar to the second. So I'm going to show you this edition, and you'll have a pretty good idea of what you can get from the website. There's also a bit of a, it's a bit of a mixed feelings when it comes to this deck, because unfortunately, as you know, if you have the first edition, you will know that the colors and the contrast, let's say, stronger. The colors are slightly more saturated and the contrast. As a consequence, I actually don't have the first edition, so what I'm telling you right now, it's what I've heard from other people that have both the edition, and they made a comparison video, but it's not my first experience, so I'm only telling you what I heard. And so basically there is more contrast, the colors are more saturated, and as a consequence it feels and looks like it's a let's say the reading experience is slightly different and perhaps probably slightly better. What I can tell you by working with this deck, so the second edition, is that I absolutely love it. It's a unique piece of art. It definitely feels like I can very much say it's a piece of art, because it really feels like it is. It is precious, that's what it feels like. The cardstock is phenomenal. It is my favorite cardstock. It is that kind of, matte that is sturdy at the same time, but it's also very smooth. So it fans out like a charm. It shuffles very well. It's a gorgeous deck. There's no two ways around that. But if you've seen the first edition, you will know that now it sells for like $1,500, and I'm not even joking. And the second edition probably sells for a lot less than that. I'm looking at probably $200. I don't know, I'm not aware of the current prices for the second edition, but it's a lot less than the first edition. But the good news is that the third edition is available on the website, and you can actually purchase it for, a decent price. Now, don't forget that the website is, and the company is in the UK, so obviously there might be some import taxes to pay on top of the shipping cost, but we're not talking, $1,500. We're not talking $200, which is always a good thing. And if you don't have this deck and you always wanted the first edition, I think that in any case, the second edition or the third edition, and they're supposed to be very similar, it's still very worth having, because this deck will give you a completely different experience. It will just give you the opportunity to focus on a different approach to tarot, because of the different let's say layout, the different artwork used in the cards, the different associations between the artwork on the card and the meaning of the card. It will make you a better reader, in the sense that you will definitely establish a conversation with this deck that you cannot establish with any other deck. As a matter of fact, there are a couple of other decks that can give you this kind of a similar experience, and I'm thinking about, there is a location deck. I don't seem to recall the name. Is it just called the location? I'm sorry, I don't remember the name, but there is a deck that is just showing locations, and I'm not talking about the Majestic Earth. It's a different one, and I used to have it, then I gifted it, but that deck gave me a similar kind of feel, conversation that I could have with the cards. Now, I'm not gonna sleep tonight because I'm gonna try and remember the name. You're probably all yelling at me right now, but anyway, it doesn't matter. But that deck was similar, not in the sense of the artwork, but in the sense that it really established a very similar kind of conversation between yourself as a reader and the cards. And I can really assure you that if you haven't tried working with a deck like this yet, I really highly recommend it. It will give you a different perspective, and you need different perspectives. to each their own. And if you are not a collector, if you are a collector but you're happy to have you know, maybe only 6-7 decks, absolutely fine. I actually envy you because I cannot stop. I cannot seem to stop. I always need more. But what I do recommend is at least to try to use something different than the traditional decks. Okay, the traditional decks are fantastic. Everything you need is all there. So your RWS, your traditional RWS, has got all you need to read the cards. However, when you try a conversation with a different and modern take on the RWS, you will have a different perspective, and trust me, that will give you an edge, that will give you a completely different experience. So I really highly recommend it now that it's become available at a reasonable price. You know, do yourself a favor. Obviously, if you don't like this deck, then of course, never mind. But if you were looking for the first edition and you're hesitating to buy the third edition because it's more similar to the second edition, which is not as you know, clear as the first one, just perhaps have a look at it anyway, because yes, there are disadvantages, but there will be good things as well. So this is the Tilbury Tarot. And if you are watching my channel, you will know how much I love this deck. So the Lost Forest Tarot, this is the second edition. I have been looking for this deck forever. I think I found it probably a couple of years ago it was during the pandemic. And I remember that I found a US seller, and she couldn't ship to Australia because it was during that time in which USPS was not shipping to Australia, and any other shipping company was asking for ridiculously high prices because there were no flights. There were no flights to Australia. By the way, let me just tell you something that made me really laugh. So I bought a couple of decks from a lovely lady in Minnesota a couple of weeks ago, actually more than that. And she was really, I love her. She really made it so easy for me. She gave me the link to the tracking with USPS, and so USPS now is sending me a notification for each and every change in the status of the shipping, which is, you know, in Australia you don't necessarily have that. You only see that when the deck goes from one destination to the other, but you don't necessarily see when they produce a document or they scan it. And so for USPS, it's like watching a movie with your deck, making it from one end to the world to the other. And my deck went from Minneapolis to Chicago, and then from Chicago, apparently there are no direct flights from Chicago to Sydney, Australia. And I thought, okay, so it's not going from Chicago, but it's probably going Chicago to LA, Sydney, but no. So it went from Chicago to Tokyo. So my deck now is in Japan. And I found it really weird because I thought I'm not going to pay for clearing taxes in Japan because it's a third country, so I've got nothing to do with that. Although I wish I could go to Japan and pick it up. So I sent an inquiry because I was kind of worried that it got lost. And they said that it's actually kind of normal that when it's shipping from Canada, apparently, and the northern states of the US, so anywhere that is not, let's say, the southern US, it will go through Japan to come to Australia. And, you know, I was really like, looking at the map, I mean, you look at the map and you go, I don't know, man. But, you know, you do what you have to do. Just get me the deck. And no wonder it costs so much to come to Australia because, you know, it flies to Japan first and then it comes to Sydney. But in any case, I'm just happy that it's not lost. They know where it has to go and it will get here eventually. But I don't know why I went off on a tangent to say that. So this deck is, So I was in the Lost Forest, so I found it, and there was this lady selling it from the US and she couldn't send it to Australia. So what I did, I actually purchased a PO box in Portland, Oregon, because I love this deck so much and I couldn't find it in Australia. No one had it. And so that's the extreme length I went to actually get this deck. And then from there, there was still at that time, I think it was Australia Post that was subletting some services. And so I could actually, you know, paying double shipping cost, obviously, but I could finally get it here. And it took like 3 months. But I'm so happy because I know now that Chelsea Santa Maria is the author, the creator of the deck. She's launched a Kickstarter, and she kept it quiet because I follow her Instagram account, and I'm always, you know, trying to hear when there's news about decks that I love. And she kept it quiet, but now it's the news are exploding everywhere. She's been posting on Facebook groups and on Instagram as well. And she's done a few changes. So there's apparently there's major changes in the Suit of Fire, not in the Suit of Oceans. The Suit of Oceans is actually kind of the same. So she's tweaks a little bit the brightness of the majors, and she's also made a few changes in the Suit of Fire. I seem to remember, yeah, the Suit of Fire, there you go. And also I think she kept this, so she kept the Suit of Oceans and the Suit of Earth more or less the same, but she did a few changes in the Suit of Fire. And obviously now we're looking at the Suit of Earth. Where is the Suit of Fire? And also the Suit of Skies. Apparently there's a couple of changes, but as I promised, I will make sure to put the link to the Kickstarter in the description box below. So these Kickstarters are live as per not just the time in which I'm filming, which is Saturday, but also the time in which you'll be watching this video, and I'll be posting it on Monday, Australia Eastern Standard. So for you guys that are in the US, it will be Sunday, whether it's afternoon or, you know, evening. So this deck is amazing. There's another reason why I wanted to talk about this deck. Because I talked about the Tilbury earlier. This is another deck that will give you a different experience when you read with it. It's not just a collectible item, although, you know, after having it and after using it and after gushing over it, I will admit that I don't use it very often when reading. I do look at it constantly because I love it. I just love the artwork. But this deck will have the same effect as the T-Wake, like I say, it will make you a better reader. Why? Because the fact that, for example, it's got this continuity in the, so obviously I didn't prepare, so I cannot show you, let me see, 5, 9, 10, I probably can, 8, let's see if I can do this. Let's do something proper. So this deck gives you the possibility, there you go, to see a tableau vivant, like a portrait, like a landscape painting. Each and every minor suit will have exactly this. So as you can see, this is the 7, 8, 9, 10 of fire. Then let's see, I've got the 6 of fire as well. So let me show you that as well, if it fits on camera. I think it does. So every single card from the ace to, I believe, also the court cards, if you set them one beside the other this way, you will have an actual painting. Now, this calls for an intuitive reading, as you can imagine, because it's not necessarily something that refers to the traditional symbology of the RWS, because as you can see, there's none in here, right? The only thing is that you can read it numerologically, but not necessarily each and every card, because I can assure you that, for example, you do have 8 sticks, let's say here, and you do have 7 sticks here, but on the 6 of fire, I don't necessarily think that you have 6 sticks, although you do have the Phoenix, which is representing the return to power, which is sometimes referred to as the incoronation or the celebration of a victory in the 6 of fire. So in other cases, you can have the 9 of fire, and the 9 of fire, in this case, it doesn't have the numerological element of 9. You don't have 9 sticks in here. What you do have is the well, it's representing obviously a dinosaur, or this mythical creature that is actually kind of injured, you know, which is representing the sense of exhaustion and depletion that you reach as soon as you reach the 9 of Wands and the 9 of Fire, because you've done so much and you still have something left to go. So there's this kind of, let's say, echoes of either the numerological references to the card, or the actual traditional symbology of the cards in this deck. And this, as you can imagine, it will make you a better reader, because you have to remember the meaning of the card. You have to remember your numbers, you have to remember your symbols, you have to remember anything that you can and that you studied, also when it comes to the elements. But one thing that is actually very important to me as a reader, and I hope that if you have this deck, please let me know if it was the same experience for you, is that it actually makes you a storyteller. And what I mean with that is that because you have this, it does give you that sense of once upon a time, because there is this broadening of your horizon, looking at the landscape of the cards, forming this kind of really beautiful painting. And, you know, you have to probably set yourself into the scene in order to be able to tell a story, which is exactly the same process any writer, fiction writers, but I would say other writers too, will go through whenever they have to set the scene. So you go down to earth, you become a character yourself in this painting, and you look at what's going on, you look at what happens, and you describe the scene. And this way you actually connect with the cards, and the cards will tell you a story themselves. And I refer to, there is one author that I really like, is Paul Fenton Smith. I talked about his book Advanced Tarot when I was talking about the best book, the ones that I consider the best books, you know, for tarot readers, because he actually he talks about being a storyteller. So when you're a tarot reader, you need necessarily to become a storyteller. It's also because a storyteller needs to get the attention of the other person. You need to know how to deliver a message in such a way that it gets, you know, it does what it's meant to do. So if you're supposed to grab the attention of the person you're reading for, or you're supposed to tell them something very important, you also need to do it so in a way that the person actually remembers it. And a way to remember something is to make it memorable, of course. So this deck will give you that. It would give you exactly that kind of storytelling power. So this is the Lost Forest Tarot, and it's currently finding the third edition with slight changes is currently finding funding on Kickstarter. Now I'm showing you the Bohemian Gothic Tarot because recently, I think it was something like a month ago, so the Bybee Studio, so the people from the Bybee Studio, which is the company creating and producing these decks. So I'm talking about the Bohemian Gothic Tarot, I'm talking about Victoria Romantic, I'm talking about the Menagerie, what else, the Mythical Creatures, the Bohemian Cats, the Tarot of Prague. Anyway, there's probably 7-8 tarot decks, and they're all very coveted. They're all, well, basically they all go periodically out of print, let's say. So whenever they go out of print, whichever tarot we're talking about, their prices skyrocket. Every now and then they do reprint those. So for example, the Victoria Romantic is currently on their 4th printing. And so a couple of months ago, they actually opened up the pre-ordering for the, I think the 4th edition. Well, I don't have the, obviously not the, my edition is the 2nd one, I think. In any case, there is an additional, so the latest edition of the Bohemian Gothic Tarot was selling in at their website. Now, I'm not entirely sure 100%, so I'll make sure though when I will link the website in the description box below, I will make sure 100% to let you know whether there's still availability to order this tarot or not. But the good news, and the reason why I wanted to show you this deck in any case, is that they also said that they were going to reprint, although next year, the Bohemian Cats. What's the complete title? I think it's the Bohemian Cats Tarot. Apologies if it's probably longer than that. It feels like it's probably longer a title than that, like I'm missing a word. In any case, I will put the link in the description box below, as I said. Now, this deck is, I think, is a very beautiful deck. It's one of those decks that some people really hate and some people really love, and I'm obviously a person that really loves it because to me it's not just a dark deck. As a matter of fact, I don't necessarily think that it's a dark deck. By the way, the new edition will have cold stamping, but if you have or have had the Victorian Romantic 4th edition and you rehomed it, because the cold stamping looked very rough, it looked more like blobs of color that were actually taken away from the detailing of the artwork. You're not alone, because I did exactly that, because I was very disappointed. So the guys at Bybee Studio, they actually said that you know, the Victorian Romantic, after all, was produced during a pandemic, and they couldn't necessarily go to the printer and make sure that you know, that it was a good kind of production. And you know, that was the result. But they assured everyone that the Bohemian Gothic is actually also with cold stamping, but it's a really, really beautiful kind of soft cold stamping. It doesn't cover the lines, it doesn't, you know, cancel all the details. It's actually really beautiful to look at. If you have Facebook, I highly recommend you follow their page, because that's where they publish most of their announcements. And they also changed slightly the tone of the cards, so they're not as blue, which, you know, I actually really like this kind of bluish tone, so I'm definitely going to keep this edition, and I also pre-ordered the next edition. But in any case, so what they're doing, it seems like they have been asking you know, all their fans what other decks they would like to be reprinted, and definitely the Bohemian Cats is one of them, although they are talking about next year. And I saw one of the comments, someone also asking for a reprint of the Alice Tarot. And let me tell you, the Alice Tarot is for me the one that got away, because I really, every time I see that deck, I really like it. I would love to have it, but it really, I saw it selling for 450 Australian dollars like a couple of weeks ago, and I just, it's not something that I will gladly do. I just cannot do something like that with a light-hearted feeling. So it's not something I would do. But if they definitely, you know, if they start reprinting the Alice Tarot, there will be, I think there will be massive sales, because there's a lot of people that actually would love to have that deck. So as I said, I'm not entirely sure 100% that it has not run out, although they did say also in their announcements that after the pre-order they will actually make a few additional copies available on their website. So if you want the Bohemian Gothic Tarot, my advice is to really stalk their Facebook page or even their website, and sooner or later my thinking is that you'll be able to get a copy. So this is the Bohemian Gothic Tarot. So the next deck that I'm going to show you is the Lost Hollow by Pixel Occult. If you don't know him, I highly recommend you follow his Instagram account. Now, because there's been an announcement. So basically he announced that he ran out of copies of the Lost Hollow, and this edition, so I'm going to show you, because there's been, I think, 3 editions, and this is the 3rd one. So you may be familiar with this deck with a probably with borders, like cream color borders, and some semi-gloss kind of cardstock. The edition that I've got, I think, is the 3rd one, and it's your linen cardstock. Let me see if I can show you. Anyway, it's a linen cardstock. It's a high quality linen cardstock, very sturdy. It reminds me a bit of the Cursed Auguries tarot, because it's that kind of really high quality kind of linen. So the announcement was that this edition will not be reprinted. So this, you know, he sold the last copy. I think there's a couple of resellers that still sell this edition worldwide. I think one of them is Munamaya in New Zealand, for example. I know because that's where I got my copy from Crystal. And there might be a few others in the US. So if you want the 3rd edition without borders, I recommend you actually get it. But the next edition, so the announcement was that there will be a 4th edition, and after this will have gone out of print, and it will have red border. So if you go to his Instagram account and you check out one of his latest posts, you will see how the new edition will look like with the red borders. Personally, I love this deck. The artwork is just fantastic. It's also because recently, after watching John Wick Chapter 4 for the 3rd time, yes, I actually went to the movies 3 times to watch the same movie. You know. Anyway, let's talk about that later. So after watching John Wick for the 3rd time, I really rediscovered my long time lost passion for cyberpunk. So obviously, having been a a teenager and having turned 20 in the 90s, I really love that kind of a 90s feel that is proper, and it's also by definition the let's say the essence of the cyberpunk movement when it comes to artistic representation, but also when it comes to, you know, even clothing, for example, fashion, etc. So having been a fan of the cyberpunk and neon punk in specific, I really love these decks because they do remind me of that, you know, this kind of clothing, etc. And I love another tarot deck that is also by Occulto, and it's called the Neon. What is it called? The Neon Moon? Yes, it's the Neon Moon Tarot, and it's a neon punk kind of deck, and it's absolutely superb. So I'm actually collecting all the cyberpunk and neon punk tarot decks that I can find, and I really love this deck. I, however, will also purchase the edition with the red borders, because I think that, and I'm not one for borders, I actually don't like them, but in some cases, I don't know, I feel like some kind of artwork needs to have a frame. And I think that it's when the artwork is not necessarily, let's say, when there's not a lot of contrast inside the frame, that you do need the frame in order to contain the artwork and not let it probably expand too much. That is just a first look. So I had this first look at the post on Instagram where I saw the new edition with the borders, and I really fell for it. So that's, you know, I don't have the deck, so perhaps when I'll have it, I will change my mind. I have no idea. But if you do have the other edition, the one that had the cream color borders, you will know what I mean. I think that this deck is one of the few decks that actually will actually enjoy having a bit of border in order to contain the artwork. Having said that, I absolutely love this deck. It's really beautiful. So this is going to go out of print, this edition. So if you want this one, grab it. But there will be a next edition, a next print with, as I said, red border. So the Lost Hollow Tarot. And if you're a fan of Sam Wai's work, you will absolutely love this tarot deck, the Blood Moon Tarot. It is one of my favorite decks, and ironically, so this is currently out of print, but Sam, so I subscribe to her newsletter, and she has sent an email, I think probably a month ago, I'm not sure. These are the backs, one of the most beautiful backs in a tarot deck I've ever seen. So she announced that she was going to reprint. Apparently she's had so many requests to reprint this deck, that, you know, at a certain point, it's also convenient for the artists themselves to reprint, because they know that when there's that many requests for a reprint, it means that people are going to buy it, right? So it's something that, it's not a risk, I don't think. And you will notice that, and I don't have an answer to that, but I wonder why some artists chose the traditional printing way. So they're going to take charge of everything, and you know, and then ultimately obviously put the decks on pre-order so that they have the funding to go to the printer and get them printed, and why others actually prefer to launch a Kickstarter. I mean, for example, the Solara Occulto, I would think that it's a famous enough deck to get enough pre-orders, like the Baba Studio decks always get enough money because they have so many decks on pre-order that they can actually afford to do the printing without funding it, without crowdfunding it. So I'm just wondering if you know why. I guess it's a matter of preference. I mean, someone would definitely prefer to have Kickstarter take care of everything. Also from a legal point of view, I guess they're probably more protected this way. But I don't know. I mean, Sam, for example, Sangwai, in this case, I don't think she actually announced whether she was going to go through Kickstarter or not, but I think that she's just going to print it like she printed the other decks. So there was this edition came out. I have the deluxe edition because of the wraparound magnetic closure box, but there was also a tack box edition. And also, I think that the next edition will have the possibility to buy the book, the guidebook, at the same time. So the guidebook is exceptional. I also think, let me see if I can find, no, of course not. There is one card, the full card, I think it is. If I can find it. So the full card was a bit dark on this edition. And I was reading somewhere that there's going to be a bit of tweaks in the brightness of the cards as well, in such a way that you can actually see the details of the doors. There you go. Okay, cool. So the full card, as you can see, okay, there's a person here, tiny, and there's a massive door that is opening towards the unknown, and obviously that's related to the jump into the void, into the unknown, that it's taken by the Fool. But this, I don't know if you can see it. So in here you have some really fantastic drawings. So this is actually a person, and it's, you know, it's got hands here, and you know, there's all sorts of really beautiful elements here that you can see if you look closely, or, you know, if you point the light directly at it. But it's not as clear. So for what I understand, she's going to have some tweaking on the brightness of the card, and this is going to become much more clear. And just to give you an idea, if you do have the book, this card in the book is full color, by the way. It's really beautiful. This card will show you how beautiful it actually is, because it's much clearer. So if you want an idea of how the next edition or the next printing of this deck is going to be, just have a look at the book. Obviously, if you don't have a book, you cannot. But it's really worth it. I think that she's still selling an e-copy, so a PDF copy of the guidebook on her website for a very reasonable price. So it could be an idea to just, you know, spend this, I don't know, just brainstorming, $15. I don't know how much she was selling it for, but it wasn't a crazy price. So you can actually have a look at how beautiful these cards are when, you know, there's been that kind of tweaking that unfortunately did not take place in many of the cards of the deck. This is an absolutely superb deck. It's just gorgeous. I really, really love it, and I will definitely make sure to buy the new printing as well. So this is the Blood Moon Tarot. Now, I know I keep on saying this, that the Curious Travels Tarot deck by Arothear will be printed by a mass market publisher. I think it's Hay House. So what I'll do, because I don't think the last time I actually put the link, I will make sure this time to put the link in the description box below so that you guys can actually have a look in her website. Because the announcement is on the website. This deck is now out of print. I don't know, so if you, this is the indie edition. I don't know if I can show you. Yeah, you can probably see a little bit here. So this is matte gold stamping that is almost in each and every card. I think it might be in every card. I don't know, there's no information whether this gold stamping will be in the mass market edition as well. There are decks, the mass market decks, that have gold stamping. I'm thinking about the Symbolic Soul Tarot, for example, by Elisa Seitzinger, which has been published by Los Carbell recently, or at least in the last 6 months. And there's gold stamping on the cards as well. So it's not necessarily something that is too precious or too costly for a mass market deck to have. However, there is no indication of what the mass market edition will be. Unfortunately, there's no timeline either, which is kind of disappointing, but also on the other hand makes me happy that I actually, you know, splurged out to get the indie edition. Because if I had to wait to have this deck, I would be very miserable. This is one of the most beautiful decks in my collection. It's absolutely gorgeous, and you know, I really love it because it's also reminding me of traveling, and I talked about it in my cozy deck video. And this is, you know, a cozy deck for me because it really reminds me, look how beautiful this Strength card is. So it really reminds me of the lightness of heart, the lightness of being that I feel like whenever I can travel. So this deck is out of print now, but trust me, it will be reprinted, and it will be printed mass market, which is a very good thing because, as I said, you know, you can actually get it with a reasonable price. So this is the Curious Travels Tarot deck. And we all know about this deck. Obviously, the Bone, Stone and Earth Flash Tarot by Avalon Cameron, illustrated by Anna Turian. This deck is confirmed. So this is the indie edition, but it has been confirmed again and again, to be honest with you, because I've followed both Avalon and Anna's accounts on Facebook, Instagram, everywhere. I've subscribed to the newsletter. You know, when you want a deck, you really stalk the creators. So so this deck is confirmed. It's going to be reprinted. One thing that is also confirmed is that there will be some different cards. So there will be some changes to the cards, the actual cards. I think that Anna is posting every now and then the cards that will be changed, but only maybe one every week or something like that. So I think that a couple of weeks ago she was posting the new full tarot card, and it was slightly different. So if you do follow her, you'll know what I mean. There are actual differences. It will be a mass market deck. It will be your Anna Turian artwork for sure, and Avalon's book, but it will be with maybe a few different cards. One other thing that will be different for sure, again, has been confirmed, is the companion book. You will not have this chunky monkey, which is, by the way, absolutely fantastic. You will have let's say a smaller edition of this. No idea how they're gonna make it smaller, no idea. It's probably gonna be, well, the print is gonna be smaller. I'm guessing, I have no idea, because there are some, you know, companion books or guidebooks on mass market decks that are actually quite good as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be a bad guidebook just because it's being produced mass market. We have some really good books as well. If you think about, for example, Our Tarot, that's one of the most beautiful guidebook that I've ever seen in a mass market deck. So there's no reason why it doesn't have to be a beautiful guidebook. So yeah, as I was saying before, there will be a few changes, but it's really worth it to, you know, have a look at the creators' websites. not necessarily the website, but also, you know, on social media, because they are very active and they post announcements and stuff, and that's where you get this kind of news. And if you don't have this edition, obviously it's going to become, I think, already sells for a lot of money. And it's going to become even more expensive, as you can imagine, because, you know, when there's rumors that a tarot deck could be reprinted, then obviously the prices tend to stay at, not at a reasonable level, because I wouldn't say that $600 is a reasonable price for a tarot deck. But, you know, it doesn't get slow, hollow kind of prices like $1,500 or first edition of the Tilwick kind of prices. But when it's confirmed to go mass market and there will be changes, unfortunately, then the indie edition will be considered a one of a kind, and therefore the price will go up even further. That's what I've seen happening for many decks. Last but not least, it's this one. This is a painful one because, okay, you'll see in a hue. So this is the Lumina Tarot, and the reason why I say it's painful is because I have been stalking well, every single source of information I could find about this deck. So this is the Indie edition and it's the English edition. There is already a mass market produced French edition of this deck, which I actually had the opportunity to have a look at, and I realized that there are differences. Okay, I don't have it here, unfortunately, but I can assure you that the borders are thicker, and so they literally they cut into the artwork that had to become smaller. So there's a couple of cards, this one here. If you go to Amazon, and I'll make sure to put the link down below. So if you go to Amazon, I think that the Magician is one of the example of the cards that they give you, and you will definitely see that there's a lot of, obviously there's almost twice as large as wide borders, and because of that they obviously didn't want to cut into the Ouroboros here, so they made the artwork quite noticeably smaller. Now, if you is that a problem? Yes and no. I mean, for me it wouldn't be, in the sense that when you like a deck, you like it because of the symbology, you like it because of the feeling that it gives you, you like it because of the way in which you can establish a conversation with the cards, you like it because of the artwork, you like it because of the color palette, perhaps because of the guidebook. And what is this card doing? This is the Way Home Tarot, okay? Oh, that's odd. So when you like a deck, you like it for these reasons, and it's not necessarily something that you will lose on a mass market deck only because there's a wider border. That's all I'm saying. It's, you know, have a look. It's obviously at a much reasonable price, because now this deck sells for like $200, the Indie edition. And the announcement that I wanted to make is that it does look more and more possible that we're going to have, within the end of the year, we're going to have an English edition also of the mass market. Although, let me tell you something, is that really necessary? I mean, I know that obviously if you don't speak French, reading a French guidebook would be a bit awkward because you have to use Google Lens translator and stuff and something like that, and I get it. But if you just like the deck because of the artwork and everything that I said before, this is not going to be a problem that it's in a different language, because just the titles will be in a different language. And on top of everything, let me tell you, it is very clear. The symbology is very, let's say, it's very accessible in this deck. So you will not have any problem in, you know, even if you don't read this, you definitely see that it's a 5 of Pentacles. Why? Because, well, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pentacles. So you don't need to speak French and translate what the title is. So it's not, let's say, one of those decks that you necessarily need it to be in your own language, because it might be difficult and non-accessible. I think it's quite the opposite. In any case, there will be an English edition. It's just as for the Curious Travels, unfortunately there is no timeline, but it does look like it's going to be within the end of this year. So this is the Lumina Tarot. And this was the last one that I wanted to show you. So thank you so much for staying with me till the end of this video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really means the world to me, because if you're familiar with social media, whenever there's a comment or a like to a video, the algorithm picks it up and then it just makes it available to other people that are not necessarily subscribers. And that's how I can grow my channel. And the only reason why I want to grow my channel is because that way I can have more meaningful connections to the tarot community. So thank you again. More to come. Have a great day.